Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the fourth day of ExpoVirtual Energiewende. My Name is, I'm sorry, I'm starting to speak in German. My name is Maria Jose Sase. I am consultant at the consulting company Energiewende GmbH, and I'm going to be your host today. It is a great honor to have you with us one more time. I want to give a special thank you to our exhibitors and sponsors, and also to all of you across Latin America that are joining us online. Before we begin, I would like to give a short information about the features of our virtual conference room. We have in the upper right side a question box. You should click there if you have a question. We will read at the end of the presentation your questions so that our speakers can give their answer. We only have planned 5 minutes for this because we have a very full program, but we encourage you to interact with us. The other thing that I wanted to ask you is if you please could use your full screen feature in the conference room so that you can have a better look at the slides. And also remind you that we have 4 pavilions in our virtual fair, and you can visit them. We have technologies for green energy, solar and storage, environmental technologies and infrastructure, and of course our global hub. The last 3 days have been highly interesting with brilliant speakers talking about new ideas, sharing their experiences while developing projects and opening up conversation about challenges that we have still ahead of us. Not only on a business level, but also on a human level. No one should be left behind is a conclusion that we got. And we can only come to our goal of an energy transition if everyone is involved and if everyone has something to benefit from it. So today we're going to tackle some very pragmatic topics. We will be talking about crowd investment, project financing, education, and also a very important topic, which is mutual support through networks. First, I want to introduce to you our first speaker of the day, Mr. Martin Barth, from the startup company Ecoligo. Martin has been around developing renewable energy projects in the solar branch for almost 10 years, and he will talk to us about a very innovative way of financing green energy projects, and this is the crowdfunding or crowd investment. Martin, I'm happy to have you with us, and if you may share your screen right now, and we can profit from what you're going to tell us.
Yes, thank you for the kind invitation. Thank you for having me. Oh, and I just see I have the wrong screen there. So now you should see it full screen, yes. Right?
Now yes, it's perfect.
Great, excellent.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here and talk about crowdfunding, which can be an innovative financing instrument for international green energy projects. So let me start off by giving you a quick introduction of Ecoligo and why I'm actually talking to you about crowdfunding. So Ecoligo is a global energy as a service provider. We were founded in 2016, and we were founded with the goal to address the financing problem of renewable energy projects in emerging markets. So we are headquartered in Berlin in Germany, but we have offices in Accra, Ghana, Nairobi, Kenya, San Jose, Costa Rica, Santiago de Chile, Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam, and Bangkok in Thailand. Globally, we have 25 employees out of 60 nationalities and with a 44% female quota. We have 32 projects of 7 megawatt in operation and 39 projects in construction. Now, the reason why I talk about crowd investing to you today is because that's how we raise the capital for our projects. So we have initiated a crowdfunding platform, which is called ecoligo.investments, where private people can contribute to these projects and invest into them with their own capital. Now, some of you may not know what crowdfunding actually is, so I want to start off with that and give you an explanation so that the understanding is there of how it actually works. Traditionally, project finance typically meant that you had to go to one large investor and you basically secured the funding for your project from that investor. Typically, it means a large bank. So you bring your own equity and you get a large loan from a bank, and together you have enough capital to build a project. Now with crowdfunding, you actually get the same amount of money in total, but you get it through small amounts by many, many people, many individuals that actually provide you the capital with. And obviously this is a technology-enabled model because you need to track all the single investments made by the small people, the small amounts by the many people, and make sure they all get repaid on time. Now, further, when we hear about crowdfunding, there is a lot of different types of crowdfunding, and obviously not all of them are really suited for renewable energy projects. So a very common one, common model of crowdfunding is actually donation-based crowdfunding. Here, a lot of people give capital, give their money, but they don't do it to get a return. They give it to support a cause, and they don't expect anything in return. The second most common method of crowdfunding is actually a rewards-based system. So here people provide capital and they do get something back. They get a reward. Typically, it's products of the company that you are supporting. It may be even a trip to a project location that you get, or t-shirts with the logos of the company that you're supporting. And these two models, the donation and reward-based model, they have their limitations because only the people that really believe in your product or really believe in the cause give money. And the amount of money, because it's typically a donation or you get a small reward, that people are willing to invest is very limited. So the more interesting models are crowd lending, whereby people sign loan agreements. So similar like a bank, they basically provide you with the loan and they get interest rate on that loan that they sign, which is very interesting to them. And the last one is equity crowdfunding, where people actually become shareholder of a company or shareholder of a project entity. Now, the most promising one is crowd lending. And that is because the nature of the projects. Now, we have to think about the projects, however, because a lot of people have a misunderstanding of what a good project actually is. And a lot of the crowdfunding platforms, they really only provide you capital if you have a project. So what is a project? We often talk about projects. We often talk about them in a non-financial way, however. When investors or financiers look into a project, they have a very specific idea of what that means. It basically means something that is asset-backed. So you have an asset that is behind the project, a solar system or a highly efficient air conditioning system or a solar hot water system. And secondly, that asset is actually generating income. So you have a leasing contract or a solar power purchase agreement that provides income to the asset and the asset owner. And because you have that contract behind, you actually have predictable cash flows. That is super important for any investor because with predictable cash flows, they're willing to lend you the money because they know you can repay that loan. And last but not least, you have a defined start and end point. Now, we all are active in the renewable energy space, and oftentimes we want our activities to be funded. But that is actually not a project. So all the work that we have to get to a project, to develop a project, to convince customers, to be active in a country, those development activities typically are not part of the project. Secondly, anything that is an operational activity, your marketing activities, your sales trips, they are also not part of a project. And last but not least, your working capital needs, if you want to expand your team or grow your capabilities, that's also not project. And it's important to know this because when you approach a crowdfunding platform, they want to see what is the project that you need to finance for. And they don't really care whether you have to build up a team first to get to a solar project. They really say, okay, that's basically your business. Now, nevertheless, there are big opportunities when it comes to crowdfunding, and we can use them for the projects, and we can use them in a way to attract the capital into our projects. So why should we do that? Why is that even attractive? Well, for that, we have to first look into the traditional finance approach. And I'm sure you heard a lot about this actually later on from Christian. But in traditional project finance, you get a bank loan. Let's just say it very simply, you get a bank loan and the bank is demanding that for their loan, for their commitment to the project, you also have equity in the project. That is how, in the traditional environment, a project finance is set up. And that comes with the obligation that you as a project owner or someone that wants to implement a project, you have to provide the equity with it. On another level, it's also the case that the bank or the debt provider, the one that gives you the loan for the project, typically has very strict regulations as to what they can finance. Yeah? Each bank has their own mandate and has their own restrictions, typically reflected in the duration of the loan, reflected in the ticket size, reflected in the risk they're willing to take, and so on and so on. And so sometimes you may have a really attractive project. Let's just make an example, a solar project for a manufacturing company in Chile or a winery in Chile. And the bank says, that's super interesting, but I don't know anything about the winery or the wine business. I'm not willing to give a loan to them. And that restricts often which projects you actually can finance with these debt providers. Now, on top of that, you also have to provide the equity, like I said before, typically between 20 and 40%, depending on which country you're in. And equity is expensive. So because of that expensive equity part in project finance, your weighted average capital cost is usually also expensive. And then also you have less flexibility, because if a bank says, I don't want to finance this, you have limited options to go to other banks, because most banks will say the same. And we should also not forget about the situations when maybe you're not able to repay that bank loan. Banks are very strict in enforcing maybe to reclaim the asset. Yeah, there is almost no room to move around. And last but not least, we're all busy people. And dealing with banks and dealing with traditional investors is usually quite a slow process, because they have demanding due diligence processes. And this is really where crowdfunding can be so much better than traditional finance. With crowdfunding, you can actually raise all of the money that you need for a project with the private individuals that contribute to the project. This has the tremendous advantage that you don't have to put in equity into your project, and you can leave the equity to yourself to grow your business. Secondly, most platforms, because they do a lot of projects, are really good in their processes and they're really fast. So typically from the first day of contacting them until you provide them the documents, they publish the project on the platform and the people invest and you have your capital, is less than 3 months. Now that sounds long, but if you compare it to a bank and a bank process, it's very fast. Yeah, a loan application with a bank for a large renewable energy project can take even up to 12 months. So you have a definite speed advantage with crowdfunding. Now, another thing is that you have access to rather cheap finance, because the private people are willing to give their money at different interest rates than a bank would be. A bank would really do a diligent process, assess the risk of all the components of the technologies, whereas a private investor may think of the project as something that he wants to invest in because he's supporting a CO2 emission-free project, and therefore is accepting much lower interest rates. So the capital typically is also cheaper. Now, however, generally speaking, when you publish projects on crowd investing platforms, they ask for a once-off commission, typically in the order of 10%. Yeah, and I'm speaking in general terms here. Now, there are examples of crowdfunding platforms, and I've put a few up here on the slide. Some of them are active internationally. For example, Trine, which is based in Sweden, they finance a lot of projects in emerging markets. BetterVest, the German platform, also financing a lot of projects in emerging markets. And then two examples, Leidener Umweltgeld, who solely focus on German projects, and Greenvesting, who also does international projects. And ecoligo, or ecoligo.investments, but I will talk about that a little bit later. Now, what are the differences between these platforms? Well, BetterVest, for example, finances a wide range of projects, renewable energy efficiency projects, and like I said, they have a focus on emerging markets. And BetterVest is actually one of the few platforms that does finance also your project development activities. So you don't have to have a project, as I explained it before. They even can raise capital to support your project development work. They ask for a percentage of around 10% once off, and the interest rates on the platforms are between 4 and 8% per year. On top of that, the platform, however, also charges an annual fee of around 0.5% to 1%, depending on your project. So you have to consider these costs also when you look into the finance option. Now, Leidener Umweltgeld, it's a German platform, and they also finance energy efficiency and renewable energy projects, but they only focus on Germany. They have similar conditions, asking for a 10% commission and interest rates between 4 and 8%. And they have also an annual fee of around 0.5% to 1% on the remaining loan amounts that you have with them. Trine is, like I said before, an international focused crowdfunding company, but they finance solar projects only. That's really their core. They're active globally. They have provided loans to Sub-Saharan Africa, to Southeast Asia, to Latin America, and they work with a lot of different solar companies in these markets. They, however, also ask for a 10% commission and interest rates between 4 and 8%, and also have an annual fee of around 0.5% to 1% over the loan amounts that are outstanding. Now, last but not least, we have ecoligo.investments, which is the crowdfunding platform that we initiated. And that platform also finances energy efficiency and solar energy projects. However, we are only active in countries where ecoligo as a company is active. So that means at the moment, Chile, Costa Rica, Ghana, Kenya, Vietnam, and Thailand, and the surrounding countries that we can serve from these countries. And one thing that is specific for ecoligo.investments is that it's only funding projects where ecoligo is the asset owner. So this is a big, big difference to what we've seen before. All the other platforms are basically providing capital to project owners. Yeah, if you are an independent power provider, or if you own assets and you need capital to finance them, then you can go to the other platforms. To us, to ecoligo.investments, companies come where they are in need of a customer, a fully financed solution, and where ecoligo is becoming the asset owner. We provide capital also at an interest rate of around 5%, so rather attractive, and we don't have a once-off commission because that is not our business model. The other platforms have as a business model to raise commission, and every time they have provided capital to a project, they ask for this once-off commission. Our business model is actually that we are an independent power provider and we sell the electricity to customers in the markets. So there is no fee on ecoligo.investments. So this is really what makes us different to others. So we're not only the crowd investing platform, we're actually the asset owner that sells the green electricity or leases the energy efficiency project to a business owner in an emerging market. And with the payments that we receive, we are actually repaying the crowd investors, right? So that's different to most other platforms. So in summary, you can say that if you are an independent power producer and your core business is to own assets and to have leasing or power purchase agreements with customers, or when you want to finance your utility scale project that feeds into the national grid with a feed-in tariff, then you can use platforms such as BetterVest, Greenvesting, or Trine. You can really see them as a capital provider to you, right? You should be aware, however, of the once-off fee that you have to pay to them and the running costs that come on top of your interest rate. And lastly, obviously, they also have a due diligence process. So when you apply for capital with them, you should prepare the technical and financial documents so that the platforms can check your project and then actually allow it to be published on the platform. But if you are, however, a company that is focusing on EPC services, so your core business is building projects, but you have customers that require a PPA or a lease, then you can reach out to Ecoligo. And then we become active as the IPP. We pay you for the turnkey construction of the project with the crowd capital, and we raise that capital basically on behalf on the ecoligo.investments platform, which comes at no cost for you. And we basically take care of the due diligence of the customer, the project, together with you and the client. And with that, I'm actually at the end of my presentation. And I think we can open the floor for some questions on crowdfunding and how we can actually attract capital to green projects in Latin America.
Martin, thank you very much for your presentation. We have some questions. One question, I think you can read it also, but I will read it for you, is how many funds have been raised via crowdfunding globally, for example, per year, cumulative so far?
Yeah, so I can give you the number in Germany. In Germany, it's 170 million, or that's actually the 2019 number, a total of 170 million. It's a fast growing market, and especially the green or sustainable projects see growth rates of around 200 to 500% year on year, depending on the country that you're in. So you have to think about it as something that is limited only by the financial capability of all the people in a country. I give another example from Germany. In Germany, we have 2.9 billion euro on bank accounts of the private people that people leave untouched, right? And that is money that could be invested in these projects. So the crowdfunding market actually is a really fast growing market.
Thank you, Martin. We also have another question from someone in the chat. The question is, which were the most successful crowdfunding campaigns or projects on your platform? If you could give a couple of examples.
Yeah, we actually had one project which was for a mall in Kenya, where we raised 180,000 euro, and we raised that within just one day. There are other examples of crowdfunding, not on renewable energy projects, but there is this German bank called Tomorrow Bank, and they raised 3 million within half an hour. Yeah, so you can see really that if people are behind the project and behind the idea, you can raise capital really fast. Yeah, again, remember that I said before, if you talk to a bank, processes take months and months and months. And sometimes at the end of 9 months work with a bank, the bank says, oh, I don't give you the loan, I'm not interested in the project. Whereas with crowd investors, you have an almost 100% success rate in raising the capital.
Mm-hmm. Okay, it's very impressive, Martin. There are some other questions. One is, do you finance community infrastructure assets as well?
I was expecting this question. Unfortunately, we don't. So we as a company have a clear focus on commercial and industrial customers. The reason for that is that we can perform a financial due diligence on these customers and therefore know the risk involved for the projects and then can communicate this risk to the crowd investors. However, Trine, the example I mentioned before, has provided a lot of capital to mini grids, to community rural electrification developers and companies building up these mini grids in communities, and they would be your go-to place. Yeah, I can definitely recommend them as well.
Okay, thank you very much. And the last question that we have here is, do you also provide assistance in project development?
Yes, we do. So we, within the markets where we are active with our own team, support local EPCs in project development. We provide them with technical assistance. We provide them with the right tools to find the right system size, to identify the right customers. We help them with the offer presentation and also with all the contractual work. So if there is an interest from a market, feel free to send me an email and we can see how we can collaborate.
Thank you, Martin. If you agree, we can put your presentation also in our own booth at our fair trade, and interested people might download it from there. We're in the Global Hub Pavilion. You can visit us and you can have the information from Martin, can contact him directly. Thank you, Martin, very much.
Thank you as well. Thank you for the opportunity and enjoy the rest of your days, everyone.
Thank you. Now is the turn to present our next speaker, Mr. Christian Erich